Hey, the Tedster here. Just wanted to go ahead and talk to you about Holopalm and its more importance to the league and why I'm using it. So this is an awesome build. Obviously, Holopalm technique. You count as dual wielding while you're unencumbered. 60% more attack speed when you are unencumbered. 14 to 20 added attack physical damage per 10 dexterity when you are unencumbered. So obviously the goal is that you are planning on using as much dexterity as possible, which we're at 1,149. This has some pretty interesting implications. The reason why this is so important is because not only do you have obviously a ton of decks so you can deal damage, but you don't really have to worry about chance to hit at that point because your chance to hit is also based off of your dexterity, accuracy, and evasion. You also, for the most part, do not need to take acrobatics or phase acrobatics unless you're really worried about spells because you already have a tremendous amount of dodge. I tend to also use Val Grace during scary moments, so having Val Grace as well as a 49% chance or 48% chance to dodge attacks, you're in pretty good shape. Like, it's going to be very difficult to get hurt in that sense. So it's pretty awesome. We went with, as far as this character is concerned, we started with Ranger, and then we went with Raider. Raider allows us to go ahead and take Onslaught on 10 seconds on kill. It allows us to move faster with Cyclone. Very, very important. Avatar of the Chase gives us Onslaught effect and more chance to evade melee and projectile attacks during Onslaught, so just to kind of stack our defenses. Way the Poacher to gain Frenzy charges and +1 Maxim Frenzy charges, and Avatar of the Slaughter, which cares about our Frenzy charges. The Frenzy charge stuff, the stacking of Frenzy charges, very important to a point. I would, once I level up more, because right now I believe I'm level 89. Yeah, I'm at level 89. I would say by 95, I will have this life node 1, 2, 3, and then I will also have this endurance charges for an extra endurance charge. We also take this right here, Disciple of the Unyielding, for endurance charge on kill. And our jewels are probably the most important thing as well, and we'll get to that in a second. So the more important part is that because you're using a build that requires very specific items, it's very difficult to stack life. Having 4,157 life is pretty normal for us. We do need to know the boss mechanics better than most people to go ahead and do this build efficiently. However, this build can definitely do all content. It destroys everything in the game. Zeri just gets annihilated. Bosses get obliterated. There's absolutely nothing that you can't do. You spin, you life leech, and mana leech so much that it's crazy. We only take 1 point in mana leech. There, you can save this point if you get some OPGG armor, but it's not necessary to spend 10 to 12 EX to go ahead and try to develop armor like that. If you have the extra currency, great. This is, I would say, what I would call an 6 to 8 EX currency type of build. You can definitely do this on a budget. You may not be able to complete all the content that way. Correction, if you pay attention to my advice, you can clear the content that way. But yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be a little different. So I'm gonna go through the items really quick, and then I'm gonna go through the skill gems, and then I will show you a map of a tier 16 map, and we'll be doing the Delirium in tier 16 map as well. This can do 100% Delirium mods in Tier 7 without any issue whatsoever. So that means that we put 5 Delirium stacks onto the map and went through it. So we're running Black Sun Crest. Black Sun Crest, ignore the enchant. I've been trying to do Cyclone. With this build in particular, Cyclone attack speed is not what you want. Unlike normal builds, we actually want Cyclone damage, increased damage. The reason why is because Cyclone has a capped limit on its attack speed of 1,000%, and we hit that with our with our frenzy charges and our stuff in the skill tree. So there's no reason to have the attack speed. It doesn't do any good for us. And yeah. So 15% increased strength, 15% increased dexterity. Extremely important to help us go ahead and make sure that we can use all the skills that we need. Last but not least, the 9% increased intelligence, which really is only mattering for infused channeling. But that 9% increased intelligence can be as low as it wants to be. You'll have enough intelligence for when you're doing everything. But the reason why we use this is the 15% increased dex, 40% reduced light radius. Doesn't really matter at all. Doesn't bother us. Yeah. So we move down to Wild Wrap. Wild Wrap is actually very cheap to go ahead and make. You get a 6-link Brisk Wrap, and then you upgrade it to Wild Wrap. That's the best way to do it. You get 15% increased dex, 10% increased attack speed, 5% increased movement speed, and 1% increased damage per 15 dexterity. So there's a lot of increased damage in this just by using this armor alone. There will be a damage difference, but there will be a quality of life difference if you were to get a minus 15 to cost of skills armor. You do this by going ahead and using a Redeemer armor, something like this. That's item level 83, and then you quality it to 28 using Hillock. Enchant it with a 11% quality, and 6-link it, and then go work your magic to go ahead and do what you want to do with it. You can either chaos spam it, or you can alt and then regal it and do the rest that you want to do with it. That would be my recommendation to you if you have all the money in the world as far as currency. If you're sitting here due to the crisis, but if you don't and you aren't just sitting there during the crisis, then you can go ahead and get a Wild Wrap. Wild Wrap 6-link is I think 1x. It's pretty cheap. And then we use 2 Lahupaval Iron Rings. I bought these for 20 chaos each. I think they're still pretty cheap. Let's just check. 30% elemental resistances and 20 or higher to all attributes is the thing that matters the most of what we care about. Everything else is just kind of gravy. Yeah, they're cheap. They're really cheap. So, but the reason why that's so important is because we need as many elemental resistances as possible. We're using a lot of uniques. So, and we don't have 3 slots. So it's really rough. I'm using a rare amulet. To get a rare amulet like this, it's going to be an astronomical amount of currency. I bought this at the beginning of the league for 4 chaos. RIP that person. I did not expect to use this for this type of build. I was expecting to just hold on to this because it dealt a lot of damage, because 6% increased damage per frenzy charge. I was stacking Frenzy Charge and doing Flicker Strike for a while. So this with 8 Flicker Strike stacks, just all in all, was perfect and helped with my accuracy a lot. Now it's even better, giving 90, I think it's 97 increased dex, plus 6% increased dexterity. Plus we allocate Weathered Hunter, which gives us even more dexterity. It's an OP jewel. Or rather amulet. Astramentis would be what I would recommend. Picking up Astramentis and then doing 20% increased quality to get up to over 100 dexterity. That's probably what I would do. It would help you tremendously with all of your stats. You could pretty much do whatever you need to. One of the positives about doing Astramentis versus something like this squeezes out a little bit more damage, but Astramentis allows you to use something that's not Black Sun Crest to help you with your strength modifier. And it allows you to basically use a belt that has dex stacking instead of a belt like this. So doing Astramentis allows you to kind of have a deck stacking belt, and yeah. So, um, so my belt is a Stygian Vise that I have quality to 20%. It is an almost 150 resistance belt. It's a very stacked belt. Again, You need as much resistance as possible. I would recommend either a rare unique belt that gives resistances, or I would recommend a Stygian Vise that gives resistances, plus the socket gives an additional amount of resistances to it. The reason why this is not as necessary as you may think it is, like your eyes are probably bugging out of your head, like, holy fuck, Ted, like this is like 7 or 10 EX. Like, what the hell am I going to do with this? We're also using, I'll show you right now, we're also using Purity of Elements. So our 27% to all elemental resistances are coming right from here. So you don't necessarily need some crazy OPGG belt. You can follow through with getting something that's 20% all res or even 25% all res with a good life roll on a belt. And as long as you have a decent purity of elements that's leveled up, you're still going to hit 75 to everything. So don't like bug your eyes out and be like, what the hell is this? This guy's nuts. Like, this is a 30, 40 EX build. It is here, but it's not in general. Last but not least is Garakon's Flight. This is probably going to be the most expensive item that you have to pick up. The reason why you have to, it's 2 EX right now. The reason why you have to pick this up, and this is not an exaggeration, this gives us so much life. We're at 4,157 life. If we take this off, we're at 3,566 life. So these boots all by themselves give us 500 life. That's crazy. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just really nuts. It just doesn't make any sense if you aren't using those boots. I don't think that there's any other good boots to use other than Garakon's Flight. Without them, you are at like 3,500 health, and that's really bad. That makes it say you can get one shot pretty easily. So, as far as skill gems, we're looking at Flesh and Stone, Purity of Elements, Blood and Sand, and Maim support. All of these are getting +1 for level of Socketed Gems and Black Sun Crest, which is pretty useful. It's quality of life, and it's just useful in its own right. Then, as far as our damage, we are using, obviously, Cyclone. Our Cyclone damage, this is... Our DPS is 200. This is like our what's here. But I've noticed our DPS calculation will go all the way up to about 800k, 900k, which is here. It's tooltip DPS. I don't think it's really true DPS because it's not counting your impale. We're also using impale and things like that as well. But fortify support, that's going to keep us alive. Infused channeling, which is also keeping us alive, so we take 8% less damage. Impale support, that's how we stack the damage on single target. Brutality support, we don't need to do any elemental damage with this build. There's no reason to, so just doing 60% more physical damage. If you have an awakened brutality, obviously it's better, but yeah, it would be insane. So, and last but not least, Pulverize. Pulverize gives us increased area of effect. The reason why increased area of effect matters so much is and decreased attack speed. We cap out our attack speed anyway, so Pulverize support is just strictly the best gem in this skill slot possible. There's no reason to use anything else. Melee physical deals an additional 8% damage, but I'd rather have the area of effect so that I'm not getting hit by anything. And that's super important. Our flasks are fairly normal flasks. Our Quicksilver Flask of Heat to maintain not getting frozen. Lion's Roar is not just a quality of life, but it's actually survivability. So during delirium fights, normally you have this little box that essentially you have access to, and we usually run around that box and whirlwind and cyclone. So when we're cycloning, we can keep our flasks up 100% of the time. So activating Lion's Roar makes it so that the knockback effect makes it so that we can't get hurt during delirium events. And in general, during any delirium encounter, including the endgame encounter. only the bosses will ever give us trouble during Delirium, which means that you can use this to farm Delirium if you want to, which is pretty sweet. Flagellant's Basalt Flask of Warding. Curses. We don't use Hexbreaker like a lot of other Cyclone builds do, so instead we are using a Basalt Flask. Obviously, the additional physical damage reduction is huge, so between that and Fortify and Infuse Channeling, it's a lot of damage reduction, and it allows us to deal with having only about 4,100 health. Last but not least is an Amethyst Flask. We have minus, you probably noticed it here, we have a minus 60% to Chaos Resistance. If you can get a hold of some sort of dex stacking, like some Amethyst ring that also is awesome with dex and has 30% resist all, then Godspeed. But otherwise, to at least calm everything down, minus 25% is obviously better than minus 60. So that's what we do. But you could be at 0 at all times if you were to manage to replace one of your rings with an amethyst ring. So, yeah. So, again, last but not least, before... Oh, and our jewels. So I'm going to show you our jewels. The jewels are the most important part. So, again, because we're so limited as to how we stack things, we have to do things very differently. So the first thing we do, we have one with nothing. It's a small cluster jewel. We pick up this cluster. It just gives us more evasion rating. And then we have Hollow Palm technique. I corrupted it. Ignore this corrupt. I'm still trying to be as cool as Mathil and do corrupted blood, but I haven't done it yet. It just takes time. The 32 chaos per one with nothing, so it is what it is. More importantly, we use fluid motion here. Strength and passives and radius are transformed into dexterity. You're looking at a lot of strength here. It's a lot of strength. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then, yeah, right here. Right here. So, this gives you a lot of basic strength increase, which is pretty sweet and important. So, yeah. That's why we do that. We are looking at... Alright, so jewels. So, first jewel, I could replace this. I'm planning on replacing it soon to save myself a skill point or two. But as of right now, this is what I have. All I cared about when I picked up this jewel was that there were 2 jewel sockets. That's it. That's all I cared about. 2 jewel sockets, increased attack damage while dual wielding, and a +5 to dexterity. So, dual wielding is what you do technically with Hollow Palm technique. So this actually gives us more damage, or increased damage, and dexterity bonuses. Then these are the most important. These are both the same thing. They're assert dominance and towering threat. Now, why is this so important? Well, a couple things. One, the reason why Cyclone is so good is its area of effect. How do we stack area of effect effectively? Well, I took Carcass Jack as an example of that. If you're wearing a Carcass Jack, you get about 40 to 45% increased area of effect. So I said, how do I get the most area of effect in jewels? And this was what I came up with. So assert dominance, 15% increased area of effect if you've killed recently, 10% increased area of effect if you've killed at least 5 enemies recently, and then towering threat, which gives us more maximum life, which is exactly what we need in a build like this because we don't have access to a lot of life nodes, and 10% increased area of effect, and 3% increased character size. So assuming you've read all these correctly, this is 25% increased area of effect, and this is 25% increased area of effect. And yeah, it's just huge. It's awesome. It's great. It's everything that we essentially need for anything like that, anything like this that we're doing. It's as if we're wearing a Carcass Jack in all extensive purposes. And these themselves, I can't check to see what the price prediction is because it won't prop up properly. This is not accurate. These jewels, when I picked them up, they were 50 or 60 chaos each. They should be a lot more, but they're not. They're only 50 or 60 chaos, so pick them up when you can. Last but not least, both small cluster jewels are aerialist. Aerialist is 5% increased dex and a 3% chance to dodge attack and spell hits. So you have a little bit of extra survivability and 10% increased dex. So all of our increased dexterity, there's 10% through our jewels. There's 8% here, which is 18%. There is right here 15%, so we go from 18, 28, 33, 43, 48. So 48% increased dexterity, and then right here is an additional 6. So 54% increased dexterity through all of our items, along with our dex stacking. So it's pretty sweet. Alright, so last but not least, and the most important part with quality of life is developing a special rampage. So you may have been looking at this Invectus and being like, how the heck, or why is he using this Invectus in his secondary? Well, normally you cannot switch from Invictus to unarmed. It's impossible. However, if you do not meet the requirements for an item in your item slot, then you can switch to it, and you'll still be considered unarmed for Cyclone. So we kill the first enemy with Invictus to start Rampage, because you can still Cyclone with Rampage, 21,000 damage. It's okay. And then from there we switch, and we finish the rest of the map with our OPGG damage. It's that simple. It's a huge quality of life. 2% increased area of effect per 25 Rampage kills. We usually hit 700 to 800 Rampage per map, and it completes the map much faster as well. Gaining frenzy charges, getting everything that you want. So yeah, it's really good. All right, last but not least, I'm going to show you a map. Like I said, you can pretty much do any map. Downside is that you got to pick everything up after you're done with the map. But that's kind of how the league is, so it is what it is. I didn't get it yet. There we go. You out of your misery. All right, so the most important part while you're mapping is that you're just keeping your flasks up. Uh-oh. There we go. And you should be able to keep all of your flasks up 100% of the time. Again, you have to kind of be tolerant to not picking anything up until you're absolutely done with the map. If you decide to just start picking shit up, you can't keep your charges. And it's not going to be good. Then you're going to be like, Ted, this doesn't work. And I'm going to be like, listen, dude. Listen, Mr. YouTube watcher, it does work. You just decided to pick up a shit ton of items. Some advice to this as well. I don't know if you saw, but the explosion things are behind me. Do not. Oh my god, I started bleeding. Mathel. I just paid the Mathel tax. Do not stop and do not walk behind you. Under any circumstances, should you walk behind you. There we go. let's pick some of this stuff up. So like I said, you can't recognize what you're stepping on behind you. So there's, just to be better safe than sorry, you should never turn around. And that's not even an exaggeration. You should probably never turn around on any of these maps. Because if you don't turn around, you won't get hit with explosion things. The explosion things that show up when you step on them are not dodgeable. As in, if you step into them, they don't give you a warning. They explode and you die. That's it. They chunk you. And normally they're 3 or 4 at a time. Do I feel that that's good? No. I don't know who developed it and who thought that that was a good idea. But somebody did. Somebody thought that that was good gameplay mechanics, but I guarantee you that that is not. And you can switch off as soon as you get to 1. Like, you don't need to kill a bunch of them. You just get to 1 and then you can start moving again. The downside is that you'll never have Rampage for the boss if they're a boss that takes time to do things. That's the only downside. Give me those maps. Whoa. Loot explosion.
That would only slow me down.
Oh boy. Alright. Ooh, yeah, he's very dead. Why are you doing this? Nope. Alright, and the coup de grace, which is our... There's definitely physical damage reduction in this fight. That's fine. That's it. So, super simple. Super easy. That's the whole goal. I believe I didn't go through all the skills, so I apologize for that. Grace, Dash, Ancestral Warchief, and Culling Strike. The reason why Ancestral Warchief is so important is because it actually stacks with your physical damage. It grants you more melee damage as well, but the more important part is that it actually cares about the effectiveness of your added damage based on your damage. That it's your base damage. So if your base damage is huge, so you'll notice that this is your Val Ancestral Warchief is 35k, and that's huge with just Culling Strike support. So yeah, it is good. Alright guys, I appreciate you checking this out. I hope that you are planning on going ahead and doing a build like this in the future. If you are, please let me know how well you did it and how well you went. I would love to know if there are any significant differences that you would even consider for this. But yeah, super sweet. Make sure you consider like I said, the Rampage idea is super huge. And peace out. Enjoy. A little plug before I go. Twitch.tv/the Tedster is where I stream on the regular. I would love to see you there. If you like this build, you want to check it out. If you have any questions for me, you can ask me there directly, or you can go ahead and shoot messages on Reddit and do that. I'll see you. Have fun. Enjoy. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and just be wary about the coronavirus and stuff like that, and have fun.